the Andrew Tates of the world. I talked about this briefly yesterday. Before I get into the news, I'm going to briefly bring this back up. Andrew Tate says, let me make this loud and clear. If you're a straight man with a girlfriend in 2024, you're gay. Lots of people, for good reason, baffled by this, but I watched Nick Fuentes explain why they all say this now, and it's because they think modern dating practices are feminine and think that women should submit to marriage almost immediately. It's a proxy argument for trad wifery. I don't think that is like, I don't think that that's the case. I mean, that's part of it, but I also think that the initial assessment of these guys are preying on the vulnerable youth, the vulnerable and insecure young men in an effort to string them along and basically force them into alienation from every other person in their lives until the only reliable source of news and community comes from the men's rights spaces that they operate in. That is what their goal is. It is, ironically enough, it is not dissimilar to the cults that we were talking about beforehand. It's the same as like identify predatory people, identify vulnerable members of the community, and they work tirelessly to separate them from their friends and family, and they constantly feed them a bunch of nonsense and tell them like the only way that you can actually win favors or the only way that you can achieve your goals is if you actually succeed within this community. And slowly but surely they isolate them further and further from normal people. And then the less normal these guys become, their sense of normalcy comes from operating within these communities. And the community has its own internalized metrics of success. And, the communities itself have their own internalized success metrics, and people just like operate within those confines. And ironically enough, they move further and further away from normalcy in that process. And it makes it virtually impossible for them to ever have a healthy attitude about interpersonal relationship and communications ever again. And it makes it really difficult. It makes it really difficult to snap them out of it the further they go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, I had a talk with my MAGA pro Pinochet dad at Thanksgiving. I asked him when he migrated to New York City from Chile if he would have a better life if he had free buses, childcare assistance, and better wages. He said absolutely, and I welcomed him to the Mamdani era. Nice. Did something happen in South Korea? Not anything, like nothing new. Oh yeah, the Bradley Martin is full tilt, getting radicalized and is like hanging out with Nick Fuentes. Is devastating situation. Directly a consequence of Israel shit. By the way, like I watched it unfold in real time. Let that be a lesson for all of you. Pro-Trump guy thinks Donald Trump is sincerely going to end all wars, realizes that Donald Trump is deeply invested in Israel, and starts going, what the fuck is going on here? Like these guys are, maybe these guys are not so wrong about what they're saying about Israel. And then they move on from Israel to, maybe these guys are not so wrong about what they're saying about Jews in general. Pair that up with the notion that this environment of censorship, this environment of enforced censorship is actually at the behest of Jews, right? Which again is not my assessment, but it is the way that a lot of these traditional media outlets basically communicate the exact same thing that Nick Fuentes is communicating when they say Israel is for the Jews and all Jews love Israel. And if you speak out against Israel, you're anti-Semitic. And if you're anti-Semitic, you must be censored and you must be cast aside. And people basically put those puzzle pieces together. And of course, at the end of that is, being open-minded towards whatever the rabid anti-Semites are saying, open neo-Nazis are saying. Also proves your point that this kind of bigotry and racism is more attractive to right-leaning people than your anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist message. No, I think that if you're an anti-imperialist and an anti-Zionist, and you are fighting hard to to communicate this message to people, and your worldview revolves around materialist analysis, it is always going to be an uphill struggle in a country like the United States of America. Okay? Because everything, why do you keep giving Bradley charitability when he keeps doing things like this? I think you're completely unable to understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. There is no, like, making an assessment of someone, doing analysis on someone's, like pinpointing their radicalization in real time is not like, I don't know. I just don't understand why you think that that's like being charitable. You have to stop doing this. This is so stupid. This is not about charitability at all. This is just a straightforward analysis of how people end up finding themselves in Nick Fuentes' worldview. In any case, what's I don't think they're serious though. I don't know. No, I think that there are a lot of people who are serious about that, where they just like they don't understand that you can engage in analysis, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that you're endorsing people. Everybody does that, actually. It's a like I said, it's filter. It's a filter for a lot of people who are not invested in serious thinking or critical analysis whatsoever. What is this? You isolate from normal people. He's straying more. You shear. He's making more for him. What? He's making more for his pocket. False. What? Okay. Whatever. Why don't you talk about your country of origin, Turkey, and the corruption and dictatorship under Erdogan? I have. Not that you give a shit about that. You just think that's a deflection. That's a solid deflection. You think you got me. I have. So much so that I actually can't return to Turkey and see my family, including after my uncle passed away recently. So suck my dick, dumbass. Anyway, as I was saying, this is the danger of liberalism. These are the dangers of liberalism and liberal thinking, where it's like anti-materialist, and it also is openly antagonistic towards socialism and materialist analysis in general. So unless you get like unless you go to college basically and take like sociology courses or whatever, you're never going to encounter this worldview unless you find yourself by sheer happenstance in this broadcast somehow, and you have a level of charitability, and you're like, okay, maybe I think I understand where this guy's coming from. But ultimately, because both liberals and the entirety of the right wing are antagonistic to socialism and leftists in general, to varying degrees, they are openly express their animosity. It basically shuts off people from seeing that kind of seeing the world with that lens, with that framework, with that perspective. It's not helpful that there's also an openly anti-intellectualist slant on the right as well, and somewhat of an anti-intellectualist slant, I would say, in the liberal side too, especially when it comes to thought-eliminating cliches that they deploy whenever they want to justify American imperialism or war or whatever, right? And I'm a fascist. Okay, you're a loser. Anyway, the point is, that is why this environment, this information environment, this information landscape is so perfect for fascists to take advantage of, right? I think from one of the easiest ways to identify this is like someone like Barry Weiss, right? Barry Weiss or many pro-Israel people that position themselves as like liberals or centrists or center-right or whatever will oftentimes look to someone like myself and look to someone like Nick Fuentes and say, oh, from my reasonable, moderate, centrist position, there is no difference between Nick Fuentes and Hasan Piker. And what they fail to recognize is that doesn't actually make me look bad. That makes Nick Fuentes seem like a more normal figure in American politics. So if you actually do care about anti-Semitism, but you end up bracketing off anyone that is anti-Israel with the same like anti-Semitic, Holocaust revisionist, Holocaust denying brush, then what you're ultimately doing is you're saying, well, if you have any sort of anti-Israel thoughts in your mind, or if you express any sort of anti-Israel sentiment, you're an anti-Semite, and it makes people go, okay, well, I am anti-Israel, so maybe I am anti-Semitic. Anyway. Apparently, the Afton Bain election is in 3 days. A collab virtual, of course, could be good. The left does a dog shit job of combating Zionists and Zionism, which leads to normies not understanding why/how Israel does what it does. No, I don't think so. I think the left has done a pretty remarkable job of combating Zionism. I think it's actually crazy to say that right now. Crazy to say that at this very moment, especially considering that the attitude against Israel, in spite of decades and decades of multi-billion-dollar propaganda and influence peddling operation, it has completely failed. And the overarching sentiment is anti-Israel, even in the United States of America, one of the most heavily propagandized countries on the planet. So I think that they've done a fantastic job. The left has done a fantastic job. The issue is, ultimately, there are still always going to be people that take advantage of the domineering narrative when Jake Tapper and Nick Fuentes are saying the same thing, which is all Jews care about is Israel, and Israel is the Jewish state. Israel must remain the Jewish state. And if you actually criticize Israel, then you're anti-Jew, because both Jake Tapper and numerous other liberal figures say this exact same thing. And Nick Fuentes says it as well. So if everyone is saying that, then people are obviously going to understand that that is the reality. They're going to think that that is the reality. That is what is being communicated from liberal outlets. The difference, of course, between Nick Fuentes and Jake Tapper is that Nick Fuentes says that and then says this is a bad thing. It's a bad thing that Israel is for the Jews and all Jews care about is Israel, whereas Jake Tapper is saying that's a good thing. He uses that as a defensive position, right? And for the longest time, due to how controlled the media narratives were when it came down to issues that are pertinent to American State Department goals, that worked. There was an environment of suppression. There was an environment of self-censorship. I myself have engaged in that self-censorship in an effort to make sure that I don't get censored or dominated or lose my platform. Having said that, however, now that people actually recognize that Israel is a criminal enterprise and an evil country that is doing a metric ton of violence and also is doing its very best to dominate the lives of everyday Americans and control flows of information in the United States of America, all of a sudden people have a negative opinion on Israel. So now they're leaning in the Nick Fuentes direction. But ultimately, they have been taught that everyone has been taught in the United States of America that no matter what, Israel's for the Jews, all Jews are Zionists, all Jews care about is Israel, and that if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic. If that's what liberals are saying and that's what the Nazis are saying, why the f would any normal person ever encounter my position? That anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are totally separate things, and that in many instances, anti-Semites are unironically utilizing anti-Zionist rhetoric to dominate the discourse and take advantage of the discourse to present an anti-Jewish slant, an anti-Jewish sentiment, and foment anti-Semitic opinions. You're not that special, little bro. Normal people are well aware of this. What? First of all, I never said I'm special. Secondly, I don't think normal people are aware of any of the things that I just mentioned. I don't think normal people look at Israel and think, oh, it's a violent country. And it's a violent country that's totally separate from Jews in general. No, they see it as like the Jewish nation state. They see it as the Jewish state, and it actually creates animosity towards Jews. The point is, for years and years, these dumb kept saying anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And now that anti-Zionism is the norm, it has made anti-Semitism the norm. That's the simplest, most reductive way to put it, okay? That's it. The Zionist right has no idea what to do about the rise of MAGA's overt anti-Semitism and criticism of Israel embodied by Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson because it's never understood anti-Semitism or why Israel deserves critique. I think liberals don't get it either, if we're being real. I think Zionists don't understand it. They don't. I agree with the first part, but the effect this has is the legitimizing of Tucker and other. I don't believe in the slightest that it's making people more anti-Semitic. No, I think there's nascent bigotry in the hearts of many Americans, right? Especially towards a group of people that they've never personally encountered. There's not that many Jews in the United States of America, and they live in Florida, New York, Los Angeles for the most part. So many people in the heartland have never actually encountered a Jewish person. However, they know certain things or have heard certain things about Jews, like, oh, a lot of them are in the banking sector, a lot of them are in academia, a lot of them are in Hollywood, a lot of them are in, all these different industries, and they're actually pretty dominant in these industries. And ultimately, that goes from, there is a higher percentage of Jewish people in these sectors to Jews control the media and Jews control the banks. Okay. It's a very quick, it's basically the next exit, right? Like that's the attitude that many people have. That's the thing that many people have seen. That's why the whole like, I'm noticing things is like such a, it's such an annoying way that people actually do this where they go, oh, I'm noticing things. The point is, Jews are not a monolithic group of people, just like no one is actually a monolithic group of people. They don't have a monolithic understanding. If they did, there wouldn't be billions of dollars poured into trying to break the minds of young American Jews and turn them into wonderful, loyal soldiers for Israel. Okay, if that was the case, birthright wouldn't exist, right? They wouldn't have to do birthright. Automatically, every Jew would be, growing up as a ultra Zionist from the start. There would be no such thing as an anti-Zionist Jew. It doesn't work that way, right? The problem is there are plenty of Zionist Jews that turn around and say, no, you don't understand. If you're criticizing Israel, you're criticizing Zionism. If you're saying you're anti-Zionist, you're criticizing all Jews because all Jews are Zionists. Well, you're an idiot for saying that. Not only is it untrue, but you're also a moron for saying that, because everybody that hears that goes, okay, I guess I'm anti-Semitic then. Like people don't understand how quick that turn is for people, especially once they decided Israel is bad, once they realize that Israel is bad.